What is up, everybody? Happy Wednesday. BobbyFi back with my man, Eric Sheets-Haber. We are doing a FanDuel lineup build. We're going to go position by position. It's an interesting slate, especially on FanDuel, where everything has completely gone off the rails with the pricing. I don't know who's doing the pricing this year for FanDuel, but they have lost their mind. You can basically do whatever you want in a very strange way, or mostly whatever you want. The problem is you're going to want to do a lot because everyone's underpriced. There's a lot of sticker shock value. We're going to have to, sift through it, and we'll give you our priorities based on who we'd like tonight. But
let me ask you a question. So I mentioned in a couple of previous videos to never talk about politics. I want to bring up Trump for just a second.
Oh, geez.
So Trump, one thing he's just amazing at in this life is creating golf courses. And his philosophy on his golf courses has always been great because he makes his golf courses as friendly as possible so that people will want to play and they won't get frustrated. He makes really big fairways. He makes very, very little hazards and stuff like that to make it kind of a pleasant experience. And I bring that up because I wonder if, FanDuel or some of these sites sometimes, make their salaries like this just make it easier. You know what I mean? Just to make an easier experience for people to play. Do you think that happens, or do you think their algorithms are just kind of screwed up sometimes?
It's a good point. The problem is I could argue that it's not making it easier. It's making it much, much more difficult. And it's actually making people worship the game because you're differentiating between things that aren't really like things. And then it just becomes like an ownership game. And I don't know. It makes things really weird. But I like it. I mean, like in another way, but I think it does make it harder.
Well, what about the thing I brought up just before that? What's the difference? In other words, they make it easier. That means it's easier for everybody, which means that it's still a question of who scores the most points. It's not a question of, boy, this is going to be one of those slates where, oh my God, all my guys got 7X and I lost. It's freaking ridiculous, impossible to win. It's not like that. Just some nights are not 7X nights. Some nights are 9X nights.
We're going to be playing 360s and not understand why they're not winning.
Right.
And if the answer is because everybody's going to with the way that they've made the formulas. But having said that, it also, like on these slates, we know that the groupthink mentality is a major factor, and FanDuel has been terrific to me, even with all these problems. So I shouldn't probably be complaining because I've done extremely well trying to figure out ways to differentiate on what the groupthink is going to be. So let's get into it with that. I mean, we've got basically, okay, so let's start with point guard, I guess. Let's get your screen called up because we're going to have to show the people this one. It's a tricky one because I can make a really good case for a ton of point guards, but there's definitely a few builds I like better than others.
So what I'm doing is I'm going to do what I did last time, yesterday, is I'm going to work backwards. What I'm going to do is I'm going to list because they're all going to be good plays, right? So I'm going to list
But I don't think there are any of them today on FanDuel. I don't think there's any play that stands out as being a.
Well, this is my point. What I was going to say is that I'm going to list like the 5 guys, at least based on this one ownership run I'm looking at, that look to be the 6 highest owned guys, and then we got to think about which of them are pivotable and whether they're pivots. What kind of pivots there are. You'll see. I think it'll work out pretty well. So, at the top of the heap, as far as again, I'm doing it by not necessarily by price. So like the quote unquote best play, if I'm ranking these, is going to be Ben Simmons. Now again, there's going to be a lot of good plays, okay, but he's rating to be, at least when I'm looking at, the quote unquote best play, and it's no accident that he's also, from what I'm looking at, going to be the highest owned, okay, for starters. Now the interesting thing is the way I look at it. The second highest owned guy, again, this is the first run that I'm looking at, is Satoransky, okay? And Satoransky is definitely a good play among a bunch of good plays, though, So, like, for example, other guys that I like just as much, it's kind of hard to put it this way, but Luka looks to be a good play. Kemba Walker looks to be a good play. Russell Westbrook looks to be a good play. I think those are my first, as far as values go, my kind of top group, where it's going to be Luka, Kemba, and Westbrook, and then I drop to Lillard and Fox. So what I like to do is then go kind of back to ownership and see if any of those guys get kind of ignored. No, I mean, Luka, Kemba, those guys all look, and Westbrook, they all look to be about 15% or so. But then if you want to drop down, like you get to Lillard, who might be less than 10%, is he that much worse than a play than any of these guys that we talked about? I don't think so. That's kind of the way I kind of like approach this stuff is are any of these guys that are less owned going to be that much worse projected than these guys are going to be much higher owned? So, for example, I would rather play Lillard at a fraction of the ownership as Simmons, projected to be maybe not quite as great a play, but certainly close enough that I would make that pivot.
I totally agree with you. I think that's like a really good, just sharp thing you can do right off the bat is play. You could play him over Simmons. That's simple as that. You can do whatever you want here, and playing Luka makes a lot of sense. Like if Luka like 11K just seems ridiculous, but at the same time we've got it ridiculous for a lot of other guys as well. And just to go through my rankings of how I like them. Yep. I agree. I love Ben Simmons, but I don't know that I need to play him at this ownership when I like this many other guards. I'm not sure I agree that Tom Satoransky will be the second highest owned point guard, but I do love Satoransky. And if you don't have him, then jump on over to his teammate, and you've got another guy I love tonight in Chris Dunn, who is going to be low owned over here, in spite of it projecting to be really, really solid, because there's just too many guards. So those are the guys who are on the lower end that especially are standing out to me. I mean, taking a shot on another Chicago guy, if you're not going to play either of them, Kobe White is 3.9 here. Like, I'm not saying this is the night to do it. And Kendrick Nunn is 4.5. These are just showing you some extreme examples of guys who could 8 to 10x their prices and are not going to be owned because there's just too many plays on that make sense. De'Aaron Fox is another one who's going to only have medium ownership when he's in a really good spot. And I think he probably surpasses this most of the time. I like this Westbrook a ton tonight. I think the ownership on him is a little bit too low. I mean, Malcolm Brogdon is not going to be owned over here because he's the same price on DraftKings. Basically, all these guys you make arguments for, but I would tend to lean with the same guys who I liked on DK, which would be Damian Lillard, who I agree with you is a great pivot, especially at low ownership. Westbrook, I think, is a really good pivot off of Simmons. And then Kemba Walker, Satoransky, Chris Dunn, a little bit of Kobe White, Goran Dragic. Those guys are going to be all in my pool of the lower end just because I think that's what I'm going to end up doing over here because I really like these values. It's not that I think that each of them are necessarily going to smash. It's that I expect a few of them to smash. And when they smash, you're talking about guys who are getting 8 to 10x. It's going to make it really easy at all the other positions. So that's a little bit the route that I'm leaning is playing a combination of those 6 or 7 guys, but mostly the lower end. I'm going to do those, the obvious things. And then on the higher end, it'll basically be between, the big four, the Westbrook, Simmons, Lillard, and Luka. And that I'm going to let ownership dictate my final decisions per lineup.
Well, what's interesting, I mean, is there's this group, and this is, I just love doing it. I think this is part of what makes DFS just so interesting for me. So I see this group of guys that project the same similarly at all around also the same price. Like you guys, and again, when I say similarly, remember the difference between 1 or 2 points is really not that big a deal, right? So you're looking at Thomas Satoransky at 4,600, Goran Dragic at 4,600, drop down a little bit to Napier at 4,100, go up a little bit to Chris Dunn at 4,900. Even Kendrick Nunn is in the ball game, right, at 4,500. So if you feel or if you sense that just one of these guys is going to get lost, right? Or one of these guys fits in correlation with one of your lineups a little better than the other ones are, that the difference in projection and the differences in expectation is so small between these guys that these are very, I guess, the purest pivots you can make, right? Because the same price, same position, and just one's going to be just like much lower owned than the other guy. So that's I kind of like it like this.
Even lower ownership from a guy who scored 63 fantasy points yesterday. You could take the shot on Kyrie Irving at 7,900. It's just crazy how many good options there are. So again, prioritizing I think is important, and it's for me I'm leaning more even though I love Simmons, I don't think I need to met this ownership. So I'm leading the more Kemba, the Bulls guards. Lillard with some Luka and Westbrook. I just think avoiding as much of that Simmons chalk over here might make a little bit more sense. Whereas on DraftKings, you don't have you have him at the same price, but you don't have these other great steals that you do over here.
Hey, I'd like to bring something up again. I have all these ideas for different videos and stuff, but I want to bring something up. Keep in mind also that ownership and adjusting in ownership is in some sense a self-fulfilling prophecy, because I don't want to go different names, but if you watch all the podcasts of the bigger companies out there, that the ones that everybody watches, I mean, if you hear enough talk about how someone's just going to be low owned, they're just not. You know what I mean? Like, they're just going to be higher owned than just because people say that they're good low owned pivots. You know what I mean? So be careful about the early ownership runs, because everybody's going to jump on those and identify these quote unquote low owned guys. Might end up not being as low owned as you think. Have a little bit of confidence in your own takes. And if everybody's on something, then you can't have everybody on like a low owned guy. It just doesn't work that way. You know what I mean? So again, it's just my way of looking at it.
Good points. Let's get over to the shooting guard spot. Another position that is a lot, say, easier.
Yeah, I at the shooting guard position, I have, and again, it's I don't know why I just kind of do it this way, but I just kind of rank them in terms of values and not necessarily in terms of price. But my favorite guy on FanDuel is a guy I like on DraftKings, but less. And my favorite guy on FanDuel is going to be Zach LaVine. He is, first of all, not to compare necessarily, but he is definitely a more favorable price on FanDuel than he is on DraftKings for sure. And he's projected to be a really, really strong play. He's probably going to also, as a result, capture a great deal of ownership here relative to what he would get on DraftKings. But let's just focus on the FanDuel piece. Harden looks to be a really, really great play also. He looks to be good. And then the next three guys I have, these are like kind of different, right, than on DraftKings. Josh Richardson looks to be a great play on FanDuel. He wasn't quite as good for me on DraftKings, but he looks to be one of a bunch of Philly guys who look really good. And then I'm down to the next two would be Butler and Hield. So if I had to pick between all of them, again, I would go back again to see, number one, which guys rate to be lower owned or which guys rate to be in better correlation with other stuff that I'm coming up with. And I already see like Levine, Hield, Rich. I mean, these guys are all who identify. I think these are the 5 highest projected owned guys on the whole, all the shooting guard happen to be the 5 guys I point as the best value. And that happens sometimes. So then, maybe this is a position where you don't want to pivot so much. Maybe this is one where you have to eat a little bit of the chalk. Or if you want to go down and see if you like something else.
Bradley Beal is not going to be one of the highest owned shooting.
I didn't bring up Beal on this.
My fault. I'm sorry. I thought that's what you said.
I didn't bring up Beal here.
My fault. I was like, wait a minute. Unless there's something crazy.
No, I brought Levine, Harden, Richardson, Butler, and Hield, not Beal.
Okay.
Hield.
Yeah. No, those guys, and they obviously all make sense. I don't mind Wiggins. I know we already.
But that's a good point. In other words, you bring up Wiggins. We had this discussion about DraftKings, but if you want to drop to a lower owned guy, that's where you have to go. And my question is, are you giving up too much by doing that? And then again, maybe you say, well, how great is Levine? How great is Harden? How great is Richardson? How great is Butler? How great is Hield anyway? Again, they look to be kind of, I don't want to say standouts, but they look to have an edge. Let's put it that way. Where it's opposed to the point guard position, there was like a whole wall of players that look kind of similar. I don't know. That's just my initial take on the position.
I agree that playing – I don't mind eating a little bit of chalk here, but I also think that you can play Marcus Smart at low ownership at 5K. I also you didn't mention Jaylen Brown, right? Yeah, Jaylen Brown is a small forward over here, though, so sorry about that.
Marcus Smart would have been Marcus Smart and Schroeder would have been the next 2 guys I mentioned.
Yeah, Marcus Smart and Schroeder are both interesting to me. I think that I would lean towards Smart probably, but I'm fine with either. And I even think again, I still want exposure to that Portland-Houston game. I'm not saying that it's a great McCollum spot, but somebody on that team is going to go off tonight on Portland. Mark my words. It's going to be one of those 3. And no one is going to play him, but yeah, I agree with you. Mostly over here, you do want to stick to the guys who are going to be higher owned. I do like the Beal and Smart as my low owned pivots, along with Schroeder.
Okay. So small forward, I'm going to be a step ahead of the game. We're already going to pull up my ownership here. So it looks like 3.5 guys look to be getting a decent. This is pretty cool because I'm looking at which one different side. I have like 3 or 4 guys taking a good amount of the ownership, and I actually like 5 guys as my top guys. So we're going to see which ones gets left off. So the guys I like the most are going to be LeBron James, And I'm presuming Davis is out at this point. You probably like him a little bit less if he's not out. But I like LeBron. I like Jaylen Brown, as you mentioned. Tobias Harris, Gordon Hayward, also from that Celtic game. And then I alluded to this on earlier about DraftKings, but on FanDuel he's even cheaper as Jarrett Culver maybe at 4,600. And he's definitely a different type of play than those other guys. And the lowest owned, what I'm looking at of those guys is going to be Hayward. So again, like all else being equal, I would take Hayward over the other guys. I'm looking at Tobias Harris being pretty chalky, as is Jaylen Brown. And then I guess LeBron depends on what happens with AD. And Culver's getting a decent amount of ownership. It's funny. The next guy I see as like above 10% is your man, is Thibault. So you could have a chance to talk about him.
Yeah, I just think it's a good environment for Thibault. I'm not crazy about him at some ownership, even though I like to play on its own if you want to spend down over here. I think it's between him and Culver as a spend down. The weird one for me, the guy who I like over here that's going to have low ownership is TJ Warren.
Ooh.
It's 5.5. And if you look at it, even his game log, since they have, it really doesn't really matter with Sabonis and all them. Basically, in his last 10 games, he's had one game where he failed to reach 27 fantasy points on FanDuel. And that's pretty good. And he's had a 50 in there. He's got a bunch of 35s, a 47. There's upside in a great matchup against this Minnesota team where he's still going to have to play minutes. I know some of those games you didn't have, one of the big guys or whatever. I don't think it matters all that much. At 5.5, an unowned TJ Warren feels safe, in the 25 to 30 range with the upside. I feel like it's kind of an interesting off the board play, and I just don't see anyone going there.
Well, and you're true to brand, because I know you like the Indiana guys on DK a little bit too, and also you naturally like to play against Minnesota, so it certainly makes sense. Did you want to go back and think about Brogdon back at point guard, or you think the point guard position is just a little bit too loaded to?
I feel like it's a little too loaded for his price to stand out as much. If he was again 6K again, like was saving 8, I would probably be more interested. And I think he's fine. Like he's a fine play over here.
Okay.
I like so many point guards that I'm just preferring to get different. I would rather just go with the guys who are slightly different there and then eat more chalk elsewhere. Even though I mentioned these guys who I like a TJ Warren, for the most part, I am going to be playing Jaylen Brown, Tobias Harris, LeBron James, Jarrett Culver, who are going to be the highest owned with a little bit of Thibault, because I am differentiating at point guard, and I'm going to differentiate at center and power forward as well.
Yeah, that sounds good. So speaking of which, all right, you ready? You want to go ahead to power forward?
Let's do it.
Okay. So power forward, again, I'm starting with ownership. Again, I'm going to surprise myself. I'm looking at 3 guys as kind of the highest owned guys, and then kind of a drop to 2 other guys, and then a big drop to the next guy. So when I go back to who I like, I wonder if there's going to be a 6th guy that I like as much as the first 5. So let's take a look at it. I'll just read off a couple of own guys. Bielitsa, Markkanen, Horford. Ooh, Bagley's getting ownership. And I have Jeremy Grant, but let's just take a look at it. So the first guy, yep, I'm looking at the same types of guys. I got Horford, top play. Markkanen as all, 5,100. It's going to be tough. I was tough to fade that, but looks really strong. Bielitsa right back at 5,300. So I have Kuzma listed because I'm presuming that Davis is out. So we have to kind of think about that. And Jeremy Grant looks like a good play. So what I would do is I would actually go down to my next group. So the next guy that I have is very close to the others, and spending up a little bit. That's going to be Bam at power forward. And all the guys I listed before are much, much cheaper. So it's moving up to 8,200 is a little bit different. And then, again, I don't see a lot of difference between the highest owned guys and the next guys. So that's why I could go off a little bit down here. So I could go back to PJ Tucker maybe at 3,900. And then kind of the last guy I want to bring up, we could talk about Tice if you want, but then the last guy I want to bring up, just because he's popping as a decent value, is I didn't even realize he was a power forward, was Daniel Gafford. So he's like another guy at 4,500 that could throw into that mix with Kuzma, Jeremy Grant, guys like that. Theis, 4,400. So there's power forward's a real position where, you're either paying down or, and there's not a lot of options. I mean, the only real pay up option is going to be Bam, actually. Or if you could tell me that you can go Sabonis on FanDuel, that's another thing you can do. But that's just a little different for me.
I also don't mind LaMarcus Aldridge at 7.2. Again, at what's going to be zero ownership, and a guy who, look, I know his last few games haven't been as nearly as exciting, but I mean, he was just on an absolute tear for a while. And honestly, he's still getting his shots up. He still seems like he's being pretty aggressive. The rebound numbers are down a little bit. I just think he's kind of an interesting, off the board play. Another off the board play I want to mention in addition to the guys you did, Aaron Gordon, 5,600 against the Lakers, getting the minutes back. Just with another missing body and you'd think that the usage would be up a little bit for him. He took 16 shots in the last game. I feel like he's got some upside here against this, against the Laker team in a non-Davis matchup. Other than that, I don't think I'm going to play the chalky Horford very much here on FanDuel. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me why I would need to, because I like like we sort of talked about, I like the other guys just as much. I think I prefer Markkanen and Jeremy Grant above the other guys with Bjelica right behind them. I think Bagley is a little bit further behind for me, but I definitely see the upside there. I think that I'm mostly going to stick in that range and then play a little bit of the Sabonis and a little bit of the Aldridge, but mostly it's going to be the main guys, with the exception of Horford.
You like Tice at all?
I think I'm open to him, like if he plays, but I just feel like you're sort of limiting yourself ceiling wise. Like I'd rather play the other players in his price range. Like I'd rather take a shot and go a little bit higher and play Kuzma.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, that's presuming that what's his name is out. Obviously.
Well, we won't know about that probably. So that's what makes Kuzma the better play. Because if that is announced, Kuzma goes to be whatever. He's going to have ownership versus zero ownership.
Well, how much is he just dead if Davis plays though? Is he dead or he still has a shot?
Yeah, he just goes back to his 26 minutes a game without shooting the ball that much. I mean, I know he only played 26 in the last one. That's because they won by 1 million. You look at the games previous to that, he played 34 and 39.
Okay, so I found one. We go to center, and again, the way I kind of analyze it is the projections I have as a function of value, as a function of what projected ownership is, and that those things all change during the course of the day. Projections change, ownership projections change. That's always the balance I'm kind of strike. And then, in a perfect world, you also get some good correlation. And at the center position, I'll just kind of throw it out there that the top value that I have is barely owned at all. So we'll talk about that. Highest owned guy I see is Capella, and then you're down to not down to. Then you could move up and play Jokic, or you could go down all the way to the minimum and play Bryant or Thomas Bryant or Cody Zeller. But I mean, when I look at the projections, like for me, Capella looks to be the second best play. For me, the best play on the board looks like Cantor. So we're gonna have to talk about that.
Because you mentioned Tice, but I don't see if you can't like Tice and Cantor.
No, I know. No, I know that. I'm just kind of, you know what I mean. I wouldn't play them both. You know what I mean. I'm just kind of throwing it out there.
No. But do you mean Cantor if Tice is out? Because I don't think Cantor is gonna get them. You can make an argument for him as a tournament play if Tice is in, but I think it's a longer shot.
Okay.
That's my personal take, but it is, against potentially Drummond, so he might need, they might need a little more size. He said he's played well against Drummond in the past.
I'm not really liking these other. I'm not really liking Zeller or Jokic or.
No, it's a lousy position in my opinion.
I prefer Adams if you want to know the truth. To all those guys, or take a flyer with McGee, you know what I mean, or something like that.
I would personally lean if you want to pay up.
Boy, this stinks. This position, doesn't it? Huh?
I don't think Vooch is a bad play. If you want to pay up at literally 0 ownership. I don't mind Cantor as a tournament play without Tice, but with him I'm a little nervous, and it does get a little tricky. I think Cody Zeller is reasonable at 4.3. Actually, I think he's very reasonable. I think it's probably where you end up a lot of the time. I don't mind a shot on Mahinmi, which I really feels gross to say. I just think that his size against the Bulls team. Like maybe he gets 28 minutes and puts up, he can put up 40 again like he just did. But yeah, it is kind of a gross position. All I can say is that I'm not in love with the chalky guys for sure, other than maybe I do like Zeller. But I'm not all that interested in playing Capella here. And I'm not all that interested in playing. I mean, Jokic is fine. It's a tough position. It's not a whole lot to be excited about.
You like Plumlee at 3,800?
I think that's interesting, ish. Can you get away? I don't know. It just feels wrong. We need to figure out somebody better at this position because I really don't like hardly anyone.
Well, maybe that's what. Maybe you do what you said. Maybe you go up to somebody solid. You go up to like Vooch. You know what I mean? And hope that, and then hope he just gets his 40 or whatever. Excuse his 45 or whatever, and you make it up elsewhere, I guess.
Yeah, I think we're gonna. Gorgie Jang as a tournament fly. Take a flyer on him. I think for sure. There's definitely an upside for these minutes in this matchup, and that's what you're looking at with him. He might be the sneaky play I end up going to just because I think he's got every reason to succeed that I think that Cantor does.
So it's interesting. So for me, I mean, FanDuel didn't seem as well. Again, the way I built these things, I have no correlation between any of these guys. I just kind of try to pick the lower owned of like some different alternatives and stuff. But again, you can make concessions and go back to what you liked. And, like you want to play, I don't know if you liked anybody. If you want to play, you want a low-owned thing, and you don't have to do anything else. You can play You want to play Wiggins and TJ Warren from the Minnesota-Indiana game. You could get all the leverage on the entire universe. That'll be the end of that.
Sure, there's plenty of.
Or like you said, like if you like De'Aaron Fox, again, that whole bunch of point guards. They're just a little bit worse than the others, and you could play him with Luka or something like that, So there are ways you could like differentiate between different good plays based on the way the rest of your lineup is going to fill out.
Yeah, Dwight Powell's going to be out of the mix now. I'm just looking at it right now to see if there's any center I can give a little bit more of a endorsement to, and not having so much luck with it yet. If there was going to be no Porzingis, which I think he's going to play, Dwight Powell.
You think so?
Dwight Powell's in play. I think so. They just announced that he's on track to play. I don't know, man. The center spot is definitely ugly. We're going to have to wait to see what news we hear. I would say that if Tice is out, it does make Cantor feel even better. And I think that Gorgie Jang, I'm telling you, I think there's some merit to that play. So
I think overall, but again, they made it bad for everybody, right? So it's not like where there's so many good plays at these other positions. All right, so center just freaking stinks. So that's. But I think it's going to be interesting though. So if you end up playing kind of like a low price center guy, is this the day that you watch Jokic put up 80 or something? You don't have it. And
no, Jokic is fine. I play Jokic if you want. That's fine with me. It sort of goes along with my playing Vooch thing, except for Jokic has a better matchup, but at the same time, they're both, I don't know. It's ugly. I mean, what I'm leaning towards right now is more of this Cantor, Jang, and I'm hoping Tice is out. And if it doesn't happen, I think I'm going to jump up to Vooch and maybe some Jokic. I actually think now I see why the ownership's going to be so high on Capella because it's just such an ugly position.
Yeah, right. I think he's gonna remember he's got the he'll be running up and down the court like we said, and Hassan isn't necessarily going to be keeping up with him. He'll be able to get his share.
That's for sure. All right, man. So final thoughts. One thing I want to leave it with FanDuel is just that the pricing of the Chicago guys are just way too good, and we already talked about it, but like. That's where I'm building my core around is just trying to stack that game all over the place. And mostly it's on the Chicago side of it because it's hard to figure out the Wizards, but
so hang on. So I think that's actually worth talking about. So, you on the one hand, you could play like all these Chicago guys and you have to pick from these these Washington guys, it's kind of hard to not have Bradley Beal, even though there's like a lot of better plays at that position. It's kind of hard to not have him in a stack, right? With Chicago.
But stack 3 Chicago guys and not play anybody from Washington.
That's true.
I have no problem.
What do you think? What do you think about Bertans on?
I think he's reasonable too. 5K on FanDuel. Definitely like him a little better on FanDuel. Obviously, the 3-point bonus you can't get there, but
the other thing you could do. I mean, you think about this is we didn't really go over him because we just never got to him because we went position by position. But what if you did something similar to you play all these Boston guys also? I mean, these Boston guys all look really good.
Yeah, they're going to be, and both of them will be somewhat chalky over here, but Boston's a little bit different because obviously the spot isn't as good. They're big favorites. It could go a lot of different ways. They still have a lot of bodies. So I would prefer to play like 1 or 2 Boston guys with a couple of Bulls on most of my lineups.
And you could run their Boston guys back with Andre Drummond and have him play 16 minutes.
Yeah, you just got to differentiate. Make sure you got to – yeah, I don't know what's going to happen with that. Hey, Drummond, maybe that's the answer, by the way. Maybe we just pay up for Drummond and just hope they don't I really think it's unlikely that the same thing happens again. So Drummond's a good guy, too. Like, he's always been, like, a good guy in the community. I don't understand what's happening exactly. But
and I'll tell you the other thing. Again, we touched on this again is the Philly guys all look really, really good. So you could – again, if you don't get any minutes restrictions on Kyrie, you could just play that.
Absolutely. I think that's a really good call. Or you could even play LeVert at 4,500 if he plays.
4,500.
4,500. It's a lot of interesting plays over here on FanDuel. Anyway, guys, thanks for tuning in. I'm going to leave you with make sure to get some Washington Chicago exposure. I do think Bradley Beal is going to have a big game tonight, so I've started coming around on that one. I like him a lot better on FanDuel than I do on DK because it sort of fits my perfect stacks better, but I think you're going to want at least 2 Bulls in all your lineups. How about you, Sheets?
I kind of confused myself, so I have no final takes on this one. Boy, I'd love to do a live one later. To want to have my thoughts a little bit more clear, but I would once again when all else being equal, opt for the low-owned guys and opt for the guys that correlate well. Like if you're going to want to go down to Fox, for example, he's not quite as good of a point guard play. Maybe then I would eat a little more Luka stuff. You know what I mean? And I think that applies. Like you said, get a little piece of everything. Like if you were going to play Bulls, again, if you play too many Bulls, I think I don't know if I can play all those Bulls without at least something from Washington. But the same advice as always. You know what I mean? High correlation, high upside, as low ownership as you possibly can get. And keep in mind that tonight everybody's got it easy. So 400 points. If you get 400 points and lose, don't come crying to me.
All right, guys. Good luck to all you out there. Thanks so much for tuning in. Give us the like and subscribe. We appreciate all your guys' info. Any questions, thoughts, criticisms, hit me up on Twitter. Hit Sheets up on Twitter. And you know what? If the criticism, hit Sheets up. Anyway, I'll talk to you guys shortly. Have a good luck tonight.